Welcome to People of Space. I'm your host Shweta, and in this series, we are here to prove one thing: astronomy isn't an impossible dream, it's for you, and it's more possible than you think.
Inspire the world, a brand new face. Welcome to the people of space.
Today, we are having a chat with Joyful, and yes, that is her name. She has a PhD in the subject of philosophy in physics. That's quite interesting. And she's currently working as fellow at the Office of Astronomy Development. So I've heard her in talks and presentations at different conferences, and I'm really excited to talk to her. I think she's really inspiring. So welcome, Joyful. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, Shweta. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so like your name, Joyful, it's very interesting. It stands out. It's so unique. It's positive. Can you like tell us how people in the science community reacted? You must have like some interesting stories.
Okay, my name comes with a lot of pressure because you can't introduce yourself to someone with a frown on your face. So every time you like meet people, you're like, "Hi, I'm Joyful," and then they look at you they're like, "Yes, you're very happy," and I'm like, "No, my name is Joyful." So I think in terms of my name and introducing myself to people within the science space, it's always been a joy seeing the reactions on their faces when I tell them that my name is Joyful. And it's sort of kind of like lights up the conversation before we get started and talking about anything. Already they're smiling because I'm just like this happy, bubbly person all the time because of my name, obviously. But yeah, it's been interesting, like introducing myself as Joyful. Growing up, I was just Joy. And then I got to university and my professor was like, Joyful. I was like, oh, wait, that is my name. And then I just started calling myself that for like the past couple of years.
Wow, that is so cool. I understand. Like, but it shows who you are. So like that's really cool.
I don't know if I'm actually joyful or I just live up to the name,
Where you
but
bring joy
50%
through
of the
your
time.
work to lot of people. I have seen it, I have experienced it, though virtually, but it makes you you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
So yeah, so you're currently working as a fellow at the Office of Astronomy Development, and just this office is also very interesting, bringing astronomy and development together. Can you tell us a little bit about what your role is? Because it's definitely not a general astronomical role. So maybe
Yeah.
people would love to know how it works.
So basically, when I joined the Office of Astronomy for Development last year, I was a fellow, but that was a short contract. So as of June this year, I'm actually a postdoc at the Office of Astronomy for Development. And basically, my role is to coordinate the flagship projects that we have in the office. So, like we said, because we're using astronomy for development, we have different projects that address certain development issues. So one of them looks at how we can use astronomy to boost local economies. And I think you might be familiar with this one because it's the one that focuses on astrotourism and activities that basically surround building businesses or experiences that would involve boosting the local communities. But we also have two other projects. One focuses on astronomy for mental health. And this was also inspired by many projects that were funded by the OED, where we realized that people actually use astronomy as something that they can come together with and, basically deal through certain issues and traumas. Like, for war-ridden places, they came together under astronomy and said, we're going to train young girls and young teachers and, bring the community together. And then the last one focuses on how we can use astronomy skills and the knowledge that we gain in astronomy to sort of kind of address issues as well. So this one basically focuses on hosting hackathons that we can then pass down the skills we get in astronomy. But then the other part is looking at getting skilled astronomers or people within the astronomy space saying, how can we use the skills that you have to like use it on other development issues and other things that are outside of the astronomy space. So my role basically at the OED is to sort of kind of coordinate this project, but also to make sure that the work we do is published, because if you don't have publications, are you really doing it? So yeah, my biggest role is to actually get the work that we do at the OED published, so people can read about it and we can also sort of kind of have the credibility, because it's very difficult basically to quantify what people do for development, because a lot of time it involves people and you can't really say how someone feels in a paper. It's always what difference does it make? But then it's very difficult to sort of kind of like put it down on paper. So yeah, that's what I do basically.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. So it's kind of in between the research and science communication, right? And it's coordination and management. So it must take a lot of passion about astronomy and reaching out and development and everything all combined together. But you didn't quite start out with this, right? You have a PhD in philosophy in physics. What is that?
So in South Africa, they call it a doctor of philosophy. They don't care which PhD it is, it's just a doctor of philosophy in some field. So my PhD work actually focused on particle physics. So I analyzed data that was taken by one of the detectors of the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. And then from there, after like getting my PhD, I was like, maybe I want to do something different. And that's when I came across the OED. But I mean, as I was like taking time to reflect and also like get comfortable with the work they do at the OED, I realized that a lot of the things I did before I actually joined the OED did involve a lot of science communication, working with communities. It's just that I was doing it indirectly as a part-time thing on top of my PhD. So there were like a lot of overlaps, except now I get to do this on a full-time basis, which is very exciting because I love communicating like science to everyone else who's not in the sciences, but I also love the impact it does, like in terms of we're using science beyond just the research, but how can it make a difference in someone else's life? And that's basically what the OED does. We focus on how we can apply astronomy to the everyday human being and how they can benefit from it. So it's been amazing being part of the OED. I mean, it's only been a few months, I mean, 18 months, but I feel like they just do amazing work. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, how did I not know about this for the longest time in my life?
Yeah, and I'm sure many of our viewers are also probably listening to Office of Astronomy Development, like this word and office, something like this exists for the first time. So I think for them,
Mm,
I would love to put some links in the description about the psychology and all the development projects that this office is doing and
yeah.
Joyful is working on. So I definitely put them in the description for you to check out on. But Joyful, like
Mm.
working here and working in physics, and you have such a long experience now, though you don't look as old with all this experience. But there is so much experience there, and this got you nominated to attend the prestigious Lindau Nobel laureate meeting. And you've suddenly like been around some inspiring people. Can you like tell us an experience that stayed with you?
You know, I'm actually still sad about that. I think that's like one of the saddest things in my career so far that I just couldn't do. So when I got nominated, it was in 2019 for 2020, but then that's when COVID happened. So then we
No.
like played around with the idea of having it in person slash virtual. But then in 2021, they eventually had it in person. But then in 2020, a lot happened that made me change a lot in my PhD. And I was going through a serious change in 2021 that I couldn't afford to actually attend it in person. So I'm just like, will I ever get an opportunity to actually do this again? So yeah, it's a bittersweet moment for me in terms of not actually being able to physically attend it. And yeah, it's one of the things where I'm just like, I was just proud enough that they actually nominated me. Like I was one of the people they selected, but it was just not the greatest timing in terms of it happening and, with a pandemic going on. So I never made it in person. So I can't really speak in terms of how inspired I was when I attended it.
Okay, maybe you can tell us like some other experience that, stayed with you, inspired you, just because it's a big deal to even be nominated for this. And if you were nominated for this, you've been to places that are amazing. You've met people who are amazing. So maybe like share one of the best moments for you.
Sure, there's just so many of them actually. I mean, I think growing up in a very remote area in South Africa, like the first time I left South Africa or get on a plane was like in 2015. This was like 20 something year old me gets onto a plane for the first time. And I got to go to Madrid to do like experiments for my master's at the time. But after that, I've also attended many conferences and I've like attended many schools. And it's like every single time when I apply for those things, I always think, ah, no one will choose me. But then I always get an email saying, congratulations. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Weren't there like 50 people who applied at the same time as me? So I think over the years, and I don't remember what I applied for, but over the years, I've applied for many things. And it's weird because I've always gotten like positive feedback. And even if it was negative, it was always a thing of, at least I put myself out there, and rejection is not always bad. Sometimes you just need to do something in order for you to sort of kind of realize how much you've done and what you're capable of. And that's what I think I take out of all of this, is that applying, going through the whole application process and getting to a point where they accepted me was just like, oh, wow, okay, so I'm actually worth investing in. But then it's like with every other thing as well that I've done, where people pick me and, submitting an abstract for international conference and they actually accept it. I'm just like, oh, wow, I'm actually doing amazing work. So that's always been motivating for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you like put up a really important point there, when you said that you just have to apply, like put yourself out there. And I think that's really important for people to notice. That we are trying to do the same thing with the series where people can hear you talk about this and then they will feel, oh, I feel the same. Maybe I should put myself out there and apply. And rejection is not always bad. Everything that happens teaches you something. And I want
Yes.
to ask, like, my next question, sort of based on that. In general, I might be ignorant about this, but in general, when it comes to opportunities in Africa and opportunities for women, it's quite a different scenario because there's been a lot of exposure recently, but still, like, there are some hiccups when it comes to women in science or African people in science. So your work with like initiatives like the Black Women in Science and Women in Physics in South Africa, I think like that's quite inspiring. Can you like talk to us a little bit more about that?
So I mean, growing up in a family full of men, it's always been a thing of when I got to university and was like a community full of men as well, like in the physics department, it was not a thing where I felt out of place. But at the same time, I've always like actively sought communities where I'm just like, okay, this is where women are and all of those things. So when I came across Black Women in Science, actually, that was quite interesting because it was started by a postgraduate student at my university, and she had identified that gap that we don't have enough women in sciences. And she started this organization. And I was one of the few cohorts that like she started this chapter in Johannesburg. And I was like the first of the many that she had after that. And it was actually quite interesting because none of them were in the physics space. They were just in sciences. So it was really nice to sort of kind of engage with people in different sciences. First of all, you learn new things in terms of what opportunities are out there beyond the sciences, I mean, the physics. But also at the same time, they sort of kind of like gave us skills. Like she focused on giving workshops on CV writing and proposal writing, because these are the things that we actually struggle with and we need as we grow up. So I started off as a fellow in that organization. And then a couple of years later, unfortunately, she passed away. But then they reached out in the organization. They're like, look, we want to keep this thing going. So would you be interested in being part of our committee? And I was like, I'd love that. I mean, I was one of the few people who benefited from it, and I'd love to give back to other people. So I joined the committee, and last year I actually ran a lot of their programs. It took a lot of my time, but I just love doing things that give me pressure. And then yeah, so that has been an amazing experience in terms of working with everyone else there. And then for the women in physics in South Africa, again, I started off as a volunteer. I think I always volunteer for things before I actually get involved. And I did a few of the outreach things. They wanted people to speak in radio interviews, and I did that. And then next time I attended this conference they had, and they were like, we're looking for a new executive committee. And someone nominated me. I don't know who, but someone nominated me. And I found myself as the secretary for women in physics in South Africa. And basically, this organization also just wants to encourage young girls to like pursue a career in sciences, in physics specifically. But we don't discriminate. All sciences are very important. And also just the ones that are already in the physics space, how can we maintain them and retain them to stay in physics? Because I mean, also when I was in undergrad, there were very few people that I could look up to saying, I want to be a physicist like this person. So it was a thing of how can we sort of kind of build this community where people don't feel the need to do other things outside of the physics. So yeah, I mean, both organizations are doing amazing work and both of them are still fully functional. And I'm still happy to sort of kind of like be in contact with both of them because I think it's very important to have such places, even if for just knowing that it exists is already a step towards the right direction. And, one day, hopefully, we'll have like a whole world full of just female scientists who just do amazing research, amazing work. I mean, the ratio does say that there's more females in the world than males. So why don't we have too many female scientists? So yeah.
Yeah, and I think especially with our generation and women in STEM of our generation, I'm really glad to see that they're aware of this and that
Mm,
they try to do as much as they can because they know that when they were little kids, as you said, there were no role models to look up to. Like, I want to be like this person. They were mostly male role models. And
yes.
we had to like learn and adopt and put ourselves out there, and that's what got us in this position. It's not luck. And you've also like blogged about science and shared your personal experiences, like in your piece, A Journey of Joy and Uncertainty of Physics. So how did that come into picture, and has that helped you reach out to more people and, put yourself out there?
Yeah, yeah. I think, like I said, one of the things that I tend to do is when I'm not too busy or when I'm looking for something else to do, I tend to apply for a lot of things. So I got an email randomly out of nowhere. It says that they're celebrating Black in Physics Week. I don't know if it's an American thing or a UK thing, but then it was published in Physics Today. They were like, "Oh no, we're looking for people to write and blog about this for like 1 week." And the topic or the theme for that year was the joy in physics. So I was just like, oh, so fitting. They even have my name in the title. It was meant for me. So I sort of kind of signed up. And from the shit that I'd seen, like where they were looking for people in Africa specifically, I think there were like 12 other names. And I don't know what I did differently that they chose me. But yeah, that was also a very difficult one because I was like halfway towards, it was towards the end of my PhD. And this is an extended PhD. So it was like 2 years after I was supposed to be done. And it gave me time to sort of reflect on what was going on because it's like, the only thing I could feel at the time is I'm late to submit my PhD. But then as I was writing that article, I realized that I've actually done so much in those years, even though it took so long for me to get to the point where I'm submitting. There was a lot that I went through, a lot of change, but a lot of things I learned as well along the way. So, I mean, it's always difficult because when I wrote the article, it was very generic. And then the person who was editing it came back and asked more personal questions. And then I'm just like, this is very uncomfortable now. But because I already started the process, I had to continue and like address the suggestions they made and the questions they were asking to make it actually reflect exactly how I was feeling. So I tend to blog and want to talk about my experiences, but I also shy away from actually truly revealing everything. And such things have always made me have to say more than I actually planned on saying in the beginning. So I mean, it's I think I'd like to encourage people to sort of kind of share because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who go through similar things. And unless someone actually writes about these things, we all just suffer in silence. So yeah, it was well received and a lot of people reached out and I was just like, oh, thank you. Even though it was still very cringe worthy, but I was like, I'm glad I did it. And it will probably take a lot for me to write again, but I'm always working on it. I just try to share as much as I can because who knows who will hear what I have to say and how it will affect them.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's really important to explore different things. And while you're exploring various things in the world, like as you mentioned, I'd like to pick up on that topic again for a little bit. When you said that you took extra time to complete your PhD, and a lot of things changed in that because you took more experiences, you did a lot of things, may it be hobbies, may it be something work related, but every little thing that you're doing is like shaping you, and that's what makes you your unique self, right? And I hope this is not too much of a personal question, but apart from applying to different things in your free time, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies?
Yo, I think I changed hobbies more than anything else.
That's great. Start from the start.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this year when I like turned 31, I was like, I'm old now. I'm gonna do old people hobbies. So I started crocheting. That didn't last very long. I don't crochet anymore. I'm always open to new experiences and new things. Like I love bacon, but I haven't baked in a while. I love cooking, but I live alone, so I don't cook as often as I should. And I just, as long as it doesn't involve like physical activity where I have to like run or cycle, I'm totally down for it. And water, I don't like water related things. But yeah, I'm almost a yes man. So if you come to me, you're like, hey, let's go to this concert, I'll probably be like, yeah, let's go. If you say, hey, let's go to a book club, I'll probably be like, yes, let's go. So I'm just open to new experiences all the time. And I have a fear of commitment. The only thing I've ever committed to was my PhD. Everything else, I'm just like, do I need to do this on a permanent basis? So I don't commit to any hobbies. I'm just open to trying new things. But yeah, otherwise, at the moment, I don't have any serious hobbies that I'm considering. I've just mostly been trying to survive. It's been a very busy year.
That's great. But why would you say that you have a fear of commitment? Like you're astronomer, you're a physicist. Like when you get into this career, it's like you cannot be an astronomer unless and until you have this long-term vision and you've
Hmm.
got to see in the future because you cannot get results instantly. You know,
Yeah.
you've got to work for really, really long time. So maybe like with this, my next question to you would be like with all this like amazing research and science communication activities that you're doing and that are going around in overall world, where do you see the future of all of this going? And what excites you the most basically about like the future of astronomy and science and technology?
Yeah. I mean, astronomy for me is very new. So until I joined the OED, astronomy was just one of the other things that you can do in physics. So when I joined the OED, I got exposed to the astronomy community. I mean, it's a very small community. I feel like I already know everyone within this community, especially in the African continent. You know, you attend a few conferences and people start looking familiar, and you're just like, oh, wait, I saw you at the last conference. But what I didn't realize is how many opportunities they have in those things. Like, for example, with the SKA, I had an opportunity to visit the site in the Northern Cape in South Africa, and you know, like seeing those dishes and how much work goes into getting those things constructed and how much work needs to be put into maintaining them and all of those things. I've realized that there's actually so many opportunities. I mean, I might have slight regrets in terms of I should have done an astronomy degree and not just the physics one. But I still think there's like a lot of opportunities, even if you do have a physics degree, in terms of just going into astronomy. So it's like, I think there's a lot of potential, especially in South Africa, in the African continent. We still just got into this thing and we have so many opportunities. So, I mean, I just think, I mean, I wish I had known much earlier. Like I said, I would have maybe pursued a different direction, but I have no regrets because also just in general, the sciences, I've also seen a lot of people who did their masters and PhDs in particle physics from South Africa as well. And there's lots of opportunities where we actually got to go to CERN and see the Large Hadron Collider, but not just within particle physics. Every other science that I've seen, people have just been going out there. Like, you know, with social media nowadays and LinkedIn, you follow people from different sciences and you see what they're doing and all of the opportunities that are available for them. And you realize that sciences is actually a growing field. And because everything around us is dependent on science, that means that there's always going to be opportunities. It depends on what your interest is. So I would say that as long as you know what you're interested in and you're passionate about something, there's a science for it, and you'll probably be happy while doing research or be happy while working within that space of science. So yeah, I mean, it's just endless opportunities when it comes to the science field.
Yeah, I think it's very important for people to know this that there are so many opportunities, not just in astronomy, but in science out there. And to be honest, nowadays, I feel like what is your degree in is not really as much of a problem anymore to choose like your career, which is closer to the science. Like, for example,
Yes.
you're not particle physicist, you're working at OAD, but you're still going to CERN, you're still going to visit SK. Like that would be my dream as a child. I thought that so we have this amazing telescope, radio telescope near to where I stay in Pune. It's called the Giant Metawave Radio Telescope, and it's state of
Mhm.
the art. It's completely made with like mesh dish antennas, and it's beautiful. And when I first visited that, I thought Okay, so this is an amazing place, and I need to study radio astronomy so that I can visit this place more often, be here, work here. But when I became science communicator, I took tours of people every year to this place. I explained to these people how these telescopes are working, what is the science that goes behind it, in a way that I could see the young kids visiting with me being interested in science, when I was explaining all of this to them. So I think it's a really great position that you are in. And with this, I'd like you to maybe tell the future generation what they can expect, like maybe early career professionals listening to you today. What is like the one key takeaway you can give to them that you remember from your journey?
All I can say is don't quit. You can give up, but do not quit. Yeah, no, I mean, when I was like thinking about this interview and one of the questions you asked, I was like, what do you have to say for everyone? And I want to say that you should never quit. If you're passionate about something, just keep pushing through it. It gets very difficult sometimes. And other times, you look at the next person next to you and you realize that why are things going so easily for them? People are really good at hiding their pain and their struggles. It doesn't mean they're not struggling. So all I can say is just keep pushing and one day you will actually achieve everything you've ever wanted. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
hang
that's
in
so
there.
important. I think I'll add to that saying that I love how you said like you can give up, but you cannot quit. That is so interesting because giving up means basically just pivoting that, okay, this path is not working, but I know what my final destination I want it to be. So I will just
Yeah.
make some changes and I'll not quit on my destination and carry on with my journey. Wow, I think this is one of the best things I've heard, like in these interviews that I think would inspire many people. Before we move on, I would like to now have a little rapid fire session if you're up for it.
Okay.
All right, just some fun with astronomers and professionals, right? Okay, so tell me, if you could rename Earth, what would you call it?
The people planet.
Hmm. Okay, that's simple but deep. Okay, cool. All right. One science fiction movie or book you think everyone should check out?
Science fiction movie. Yo, I don't actually watch science fiction because I think it's ridiculous. People expect me to watch them, so I never watch.
No, come
Oh, wait, I'm a
on.
revealer, okay? Someone was like, have you ever watched Interstellar? I'm like, why? They're like, because you're a physicist. I'm like, no, I haven't. So I can't recommend any science fiction movies because I either watched them and forgot or I just haven't watched them yet.
So nothing's like stood up for you.
Not that I can think of right now.
Ah, okay. What would you say one thing somebody can do that could get them interested into astronomy? Maybe like give like a suggestion to a parent who's looking for like their kid to get interested into astronomy.
Into astronomy. Wow, yo, there's a lot going on nowadays, but I mean, with some of the outreach I've done with kids and young kids, I think stargazing has always stood out like a lot, actually. I mean, I remember I once met this little kid in primary school, actually, he was in preschool, and I was like, how many of you have looked up at the sky? And this kid puts up his hand, and I'm like, so what did you see? He's like, my neck got tired. I'm like, what were you doing? He's like, I was looking at the sky. I'm like, how long did you look at the sky for? It was like 3 hours. I mean, obviously he has no concept of time, but it's just, I think astronomy is one of those accessible sciences. So I think I'd want to encourage people to actually spend more time outside because I mean, you see the moon every day and there's a few stars depending where you come from. But it's one of those things where you look up in the sky and you're just like, I don't actually have to go to a fancy lab to see anything or understand anything. It's just right there. Like the whole
Yeah.
world is basically accessible to us. We just look up into the sky, and that's all the science you need to get into other sciences.
Absolutely. Astronomy is a great starting point to get interested
Yeah,
into other sciences. Speaking
yeah.
of sciences, let me ask you, what one scientist would you love to have dinner with, past or present?
Past or present. Um, yeah, that's actually a good one as well. That is, I mean, I feel like I've met a lot of great scientists while they're
Oh,
still alive.
wow. So this is not really hypothetical. Maybe I should ask you, which great scientist have you had your best dinner
The
conversation
question
with?
is, what do we define as great? Because I mean, not everyone needs to be a Nobel Prize winner. I mean, hello.
Yeah.
But I think I just remembered my most recent experience with a Nobel Prize winner was during the General Assembly. So I sat in a panel with Brian Schmidt, and I was just like,
Oh my. Did
yes, this is the most recent and freshest moment in my life.
Oh my gosh. Wow. My face looks like I've seen a ghost. I did not
Yes,
know this. Oh
I
my
have pictures.
gosh.
I can send you pictures.
Send us pictures. Send us pictures. I want to see.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that was one of the things. Actually, when I said it at the time, it sounded like a joke because I was like, when they asked me a question, the first thing I said was like, can we all just acknowledge the fact that I'm on a panel with Brian Schmidt? And then everyone just started laughing at me. But then only much later when I processed that, I was like, wow, that was actually an amazing, amazing moment for me. So yeah, that was very exciting.
Wow. You'll keep it close to heart forever.
Yeah, I'm framing that picture.
Amazing. Okay, next rapid fire question. If you were to travel in space for 10 years, what are three things you would carry?
What are three things I would?
You would carry with you.
Um, Chocolate. Yeah, definitely chocolate. But I'm not very artistic. Like, I'd love to sort of kind of document those things that I see in space. So I'd probably want to draw them because that's more genuine and people can't say I made like, there's no proof that it's real, but like maybe like an art set where I can like do paintings of everything I come across. I can't promise it'll be exactly what you see, but yeah. And then the third thing would probably be music. I need my music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chocolate, art stuff, and music.
Yeah, and like the art would be like a nice therapy for you. It's not about what it looks like, it's more about what it makes you feel, and what
Yeah.
you're watching will be reflected through it. So I think
Hmm.
that would be great. Okay, cool.
Definitely.
Moving on from this, I think this is the last question, not the rapid fire. I want you to take like some time answering this. I have figured out that there is always a question that we want to be asked. So what
Mm.
is that question, and can you also give us the answer of that?
I think what I'd like to share goes back to that whole don't give up and never quit. I mean, give up but never quit thing. Because I mean, during my PhD, 2.5 years into it, when COVID happened, I realized that I wasn't actually going to finish because I had to do experimental work and now we locked in and we can't go to the lab and stuff. So I had actually sort of kind of given up and quitted. But in the process, there was an opportunity for me to sort of kind of explore and change projects. So as much as I had spent 2.5 years in one thing, I realized that I needed to actually make this change in order for me to be able to achieve what I'd set out for myself, which was getting a PhD in physics. So, I mean, it was the scariest thing having to sort of kind of drop one project and start a completely new one. I had to learn how to code, I had to learn how to understand a lot of things at the same time, trying to write a thesis and then also like, try not to waste as much time as I could because I already ran out of time. So I would say that yeah, I mean if you're really passionate about something, just constantly remind yourself why you chose this, especially when it's like very difficult and when it's getting very hard. And yeah, like I said, give up, just don't quit. That's my
Yeah.
message to you.
Thank you very much, Joyful. It's been really nice talking to you, and I'm sure many of our viewers and listeners were inspired listening to your thoughts and your journey. And we will be posting all your social media in our description so that people can follow your journey and maybe reach out to you if you're
Oh,
accessible to them.
I am always
And
accessible.
oh yeah, that's great. So I'll definitely share all those links. Thank you everyone to our listeners and viewers for tuning into this episode of People of Space. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify so you never miss an episode. We've got many, many more inspiring guests lined up, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. So see you in the next one. Clear skies.